Good evening. I hereby call to order the public hearing on budgets before the Board of Education for the Wilmette Public School District 39 this Monday, August 29th, 2016. Will the clerk please call the roll? Here. Not here.
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 So tonight we have Dr. Welter and some Mackenzie students who I understand manned the garden this summer to lead us in the pledge.
They did. I'm very happy to have our green team here. They and their families actually took very good care of our gardens. They are thriving. They look beautiful, just like these children. I'd like them to introduce themselves very quickly before we start the pledge.
Jack. Jossie. Daniela. Maddie. Kate.
Thank you. At this time, will you stand and join us for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I want to thank this team and thank their parents for bringing them this evening and for also helping with our gardens.
Great, thank you very much. So next, first on the agenda are budget presentations. Dr. Lechner.
Yes, tonight is a public hearing for our fiscal year 17 budget. The budget has a handful of changes since posted for public view. The board is currently negotiating its contract with teachers. It's recognized that the compensation could change upon a contract settlement. Ms. Buscemi will review the changes and give an overview of our budget.
Thank you, Dr. Lechner. In January, budget guidelines were established for fiscal year 17. In the following months, the non-operating and then the operating fund budgets were presented. The board approved the tentative fiscal year 17 budget at its May 23rd meeting. The district published notice in the Wilmette Life, and the budget has been on display for the required 90 days. Tonight is a public hearing, and once approved, the proposed budget will be submitted to the ROE by September 30th and the Illinois State Board of Education by October 31st. As Dr. Lechner mentioned, there have only been a few changes in the operating fund budgets. As we received invoices and additional invoice information from the state, we made changes. For example, our state grant allocations are estimated in May until actual numbers are provided in June or July. Also, the Illinois State Board of Education establishes the TRS on behalf contributions rate each summer. That amount increased by $800,000 this year due to a rate increase from 36.06% to 38.54%. There are a few more updates to our final budget. Revenue and expenses were adjusted to reflect actual revenue based on the final 2015 levy, and staffing changes due to enrollment changes throughout the summer when sections broke. Our special ed tuition was reduced $70,000 based on student enrollment. In addition, under our benefits, our health insurance costs were $130,000 lower than projected in May. We estimated a 10% increase, and it actually came in at a 6.4% increase. Here is our operating fund summary. The operating funds make up 95% of the total budget. As you can see from this slide, there is a projected deficit in the following funds: operations and maintenance, tort, and IMRF Social Security. In the O&M fund, the deficit is due to one-time planned construction projects that are drawing on fund balances. In addition, tort and IMRF Social Security funds are utilizing fund balances as the levy is being reallocated to cover the one-time construction projects in the operations and maintenance fund. On this slide, you will also see under the education fund column on-behalf revenue equal to $11.8 million, and this same amount listed under the expenditure section. As a reminder, under current law, this $11.8 million is what the state of Illinois pays towards the teacher pension program on behalf of District 39. The state of Illinois, this payment is cost neutral to the district at this time, as the expenditures and revenues are equivalent. Money is neither received from the state nor paid out by the district. The district is required to make accounting entries for this amount in the annual budget. As mentioned before, this money merely flows through our budget and is a state obligation to fund at this point in time. In the Ed Fund, I also want to point out the capital outlay amount of approximately $1 million. This number includes the cost of iPad equipment purchases for 2 grade levels this year, along with equipment replenishment. In the O&M fund, you see other expenses in the amount of $2.3 million. Included in this amount is $1.5 million in construction costs that are being transferred to the capital projects fund. You will see the same amount on the next slide under the capital projects column. In the capital projects fund, as mentioned on the previous slide, you see the revenue transferred from the O&M fund and the related expenses. Funds will be transferred monthly to cover the actual expenditures, and this fund will zero out each month. There is a deficit in the bond fund based on estimated levy receipts. This deficit is due to the debt service abatement of $200,000 in order to give back to our taxpayers. This abatement will impact our 2015 through 2017 levies. As you can see, our Life Safety Fund has no activity in fiscal year 17 due to the utilization of the fund balance in the prior year. The new 10-year life safety survey will begin this year to identify future projects. Here is our all fund summary. As you can see, we are showing a deficit in total for all funds. The majority of the anticipated deficit is due to the one-time capital projects, that's utilizing fund balance, and the debt service abatement. Here is our operating fund balance. We are projecting a total fund balance of $35.5 million in the operating funds at the end of fiscal year 17. This is a 51.1% fund balance over expenditures. In our non-operating funds, our fund balance is projected at $1.6 million at the end of fiscal year 17. Our all funds balance at the end of fiscal year 17 is projected at $37.2 million. Are there any questions?
Board members, do we have any questions? No, not at this time.
Thank you.
WCSEA budget.
Yes, District 39 continues to serve as the fiscal agent for the WCSEA. The WCSEA provides a special education financial umbrella for both District 39 and Avoca District 37. The State Board of Education requires us to keep separate accounting records and to follow the same Illinois state budget guidelines and accounting rules. The budget provides a mechanism to literally flow through and distribute state federal funds to both school systems, and Gail will take it from here.
Thank you, Dr. Lechner. As Dr. Lechner mentioned, the Illinois State Board of Education requires a separate report. As you can see from this chart, maybe you can't, but our revenues do equal our expenditures, with the funds flowing from the state to WICSE and flowing out to the member districts. The next step in the process is the final adoption of the budgets this evening. Once the budgets are approved, they will be submitted to the ROE, the Cook County Clerk, and to the Illinois State Board of Education. Are there any questions?
Any questions? No. Thank you very much. So now this brings us to our first opportunity for audience members to address the board. Would anybody like to address the board specifically related to this budget hearing? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Are there any other comments from the board? No, okay, so having no further business, I request a motion for adjournment to the regular Board of Education meeting.
I move that we adjourn to the regular Board of Education meeting.
Thank you. May I have a second? Thank you very much. Motion having been made and seconded, all those in favor, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay. Yay.
Yay.
Motion is carried by general consent, and we're now adjourned to the regular meeting. Okay. I hereby call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Education for Wilmette Public Schools, District 39, for Monday, August 29, 2016. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alan Schiff.
Here.
John Flanagan.
Here.
Tracy Kearney.
Here.
Frank Benzika.
Here.
Cindy Levine. Here. Mark Stein.
Here.
Thank you. Now I'd like to seek a motion to approve the minutes of the June 27, 2016 regular and executive session meetings.
I move to approve the minutes of the June 27th, 2016 regular and executive session meetings.
Second?
Second.
Thank you very much. The motion has been made and seconded. Board members, are there any comments, errors, omissions to the minutes as you read them? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please indicate by saying yay.
Yay. Yay.
Thank you. The motion carries by general consent. This is our first opportunity in this meeting for audience members to address the board. Are there any audience members that would like to address the board at this time? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to our board committee reports. First is the strategy committee. Ms. Levine.
The strategy committee has not met since the last board meeting, and it meets on September 19th.
Great, thank you very much. The facility development committee. Ms. Levine.
The facility development committee met August 18th, as well as just prior to this meeting on August 29th. At the August 18th meeting, they discussed the Learning Commons. Harper was completed, and there was a ribbon cutting ceremony on August 24th. The media was there, and perhaps the pictures have already been in the press. I think I saw some. WJHS Learning Commons was also completed as far as construction goes, and the FDC toured the Learning Commons after the meeting. They're still waiting for some furniture and shelving, but that's waiting to be delivered shortly, and the ribbon cutting there will be in September. There was discussion about future construction projects, including the next set of Learning Commons for Mackenzie and Ramona. Discussion around the Wilmette Junior High School boiler replacement, and we'll be getting updated estimates at the next FDC meeting. Discussion about Mackenzie roof replacement requirement. And then there was a conversation with and discussion about Ingersoll Rand, who has been in the process of proposing for some performance contracting to enable synergies and efficiencies, and the FDC is under ongoing consideration of the projects they are discussing. And the next meeting is currently planned for September 12th at 8:30 at the MEC. However, pending a potentially light agenda, that meeting may be canceled.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Insurance advisory. Ms. Kearney?
Thank you. Insurance Advisory Committee has not met since the last board meeting, and our next meeting is going to be October 17th at 4 o'clock here at the MEC.
Great, thank you. Community Review Committee. Ms. Levine?
The CRC met over the summer twice on July 11th and August 1st, and they have aligned on a topic for the 2016-17 school year. The topic for this year is school climate, and they have chosen 2 of the 4 recognized essential dimensions of school climate as their subtopics, and these are defined as 1 around interpersonal relationships, which includes a focus on diversity, and the second is safety, which includes a focus on social conflict and anti-bullying. And their next meeting is also September 12th at the MEC at 7 p.m.
Great, thank you very much. The Educational Foundation has not met since our last meeting, and the next meeting is Wednesday, September 14th, here at the MEC. WCSEA, Ms. Kearney.
WCSEA has not met since our last meeting, and the next meeting is going to be November 14th at 4 o'clock here at the MEC.
Great, thank you very much. And School Finance, Mr. Flanagan.
The School Finance Committee meeting met earlier today, and we discussed the performance contracting concept, which Ms. Levine alluded to. This is a model approach for financing upgrades to energy infrastructure in the district's buildings. We are working in concert with the Facility Development Committee on that. We also had presentations on the interfund loan resolution, which will be dealt with later in the agenda for this meeting, along with the annual tax compliance notification and the treasurer's bond renewal. We had a discussion about changes in the fiscal 17 proposed final budget for the district. Ms. Buscemi's already covered those. Our next meeting is on September 12th at 8 a.m., I believe, at the MEC.
Great, thank you very much. Our next board agenda item is our legislative update, which Ms. Kearney is giving tonight.
Thank you, and I apologize in advance for prepared statements, but there's no way I was going to be able to wing this. Anyway, on June 30th, the Illinois legislature approved a fiscal year 17 budget for elementary and secondary education, including a $361 million increase over fiscal year 16 levels. After failing to reach a K-12 budget agreement by the scheduled adjournment at the end of May, Illinois legislators and the governor met throughout June to ensure that schools would open in the fall. A tentative agreement was reached in Senate Bill 2047 to provide funding for school districts that will cover the per-pupil statutory foundation level of $6,119 and add another $250 million in equity grants directed at school district with high poverty level students. Mandated categorical grants will be funded at fiscal year 16 levels as well, and early education will increase $75 million over fiscal year 16 levels. CPS additionally will receive $215 million to pay toward normal cost of teachers' pensions in fiscal year 17. Beginning fiscal year 18, CPS will have authority to levy a separate property tax for the purpose of making employer contributions to the pension fund that is excluded from the property tax cap. The Illinois State Board of Ed, ISB, posted the district-by-district numbers for the fiscal year 17 general state aid and equity grant allocations based on the budget the General Assembly passed in Senate Bill 2047. District 39 will receive $144,000 less for fiscal year 17 than previously budgeted or expected. As for the rest of the state government, the General Assembly approved a stopgap 6-month budget, which gets the state through half of the fiscal year. After June 30th, both the Illinois House of Representatives and the Senate adjourned until November. The plan is for working groups of legislators to continue meeting to have a full year budget ready for a vote during the veto session scheduled for November 15th through 17th and November 29th and December 1st. On August 3rd, Governor Rauner held the first meeting of a bipartisan school funding reform commission comprised mostly of legislators to discuss changing the school funding formula. During that meeting, the commission looked at how other states fund education, reviewed Illinois' current funding formula, and discussed what should be improved. The commission is charged with making a recommendation on a new school funding formula by February 1st, 2017. I might add there that our state senator, Dan Biss, is, if not the chair of this committee, he's pretty high up there, so we would potentially have good representation there should we communicate with him. Illinois school funding formula hasn't been revised since 1997, and each district is supposed to receive a foundation level of $6,119 per student from a combination of local and state funding. That hasn't happened for several years, however, because the Illinois General Assembly hasn't appropriated enough money to meet the foundation level. Essentially, the calculator's been broken. Instead, schools get a lower prorated amount that has averaged about 90%, more like 89%, of the foundation level since the 2011-12 school year. The controversy surrounding the funding reform effort isn't over whether reform is needed. It's mainly about whether to hold harmless wealthier school districts like ours, which could lose some state funding if the existing pool of money is reallocated. The hold harmless concept means protecting school districts from losing any state funding, recognizing that this would require an increase in the total amount of money available for education. Done. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a complete report. Dr. Lechner?
I just want to add something to that, and my comments are about PARK. In the news recently, you saw the high schools are no longer required to administer PARK in lieu of the SAT, which we have been applauding that decision. And I've actually been working with my colleagues in the township to seek a similar PARK substitute for elementary school systems as well.
Thank you, Dr. Lechner. Now we are into our information items. The first item is written communication. The board has not received any written communication since our last meeting. And let us now move to the administrative announcements. Dr. Lechner.
Yes, we'll start with opening days. Our new teacher orientation was held the week of August 15th with topics ranging from professional expectations, District 39 curriculum, and school safety. Then our paraprofessionals returned on Friday, August 19th, and they had workshops that included CPR training, technology integration, and supporting the Illinois learning standards. Then the next Monday, we welcomed all staff back with building-based meetings and a big host of state-mandated trainings that we're required to give. And then on Tuesday the 23rd, we held our annual district-wide Institute Day. Our keynote speaker was Pat Savage-Williams. She discussed a culture of diversity and inclusiveness within our schools. And then, of course, last Wednesday was the first day of school. Overall, the start of the school year has been a good one. We've had a few kinks in our transportation system, but we're working them out as we do each year at this time. Next, I want to talk about construction. We've had several projects that were completed this summer. We're most excited about our Learning Commons. Harper had its Learning Commons debut on August 24th with the ribbon cutting. The junior high is still polishing their space, and there'll be a Learning Commons later in the month. And then finally, we received one FOIA this month from Catherine Smyser of NBC requesting lease agreements for cellular antenna or towers on top of District 39 school property. And the district has none of that, so there was nothing for us to report.
Great, thank you very much. We have 3 strategic plan updates. The first is the response to the Community Review Committee, or the CRC report we received last June. May.
Yes, this one's mine, and it's a response to a year of reflection that was presented to the board last May, as you indicated, and we have to commend the CRC for engaging in a reflective process. The CRC identified significant diversity over its reports over the years, and as a result, they're recommending a standardized rubric for report writing in the future, and I think that's an excellent one, and we embrace that. Additionally, they're looking at establishing a standard review cycle, and I think that's reasonable, and it's good to get feedback on the projects that we're working on, so we support that as well. And then adding to this, the board has established a strategy committee that will also coordinate with the strategic planning efforts that the CRC might recommend.
Thank you, Dr. Lechner. The next is the response to our board questions about the evolving student growth model.
Yes, we did a board presentation to you in June about our evolving growth model, and here's your chance to have your questions answered, and Katie Lee will be present along with Phil Everlino that will talk about how the process works in establishing growth target ranges. Ms. Lee.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Everlino, for joining us. The investigative process for developing a student growth model began with an idea in spring of 2016. The Department of Curriculum Instruction presented this newer version of a possible student growth model to the board last June, and District 39 values the reflective process required to establish a student growth model. So this presentation responds to the questions posed. Why are local norms valuable for student growth comparisons? In general, Wilmette's student population is high achieving. Therefore, as many as 30% of our students achieve at the national percentile level of 90 or above. And by constructing a local model, we can capture much more detail in the high achievement range. Were we to use Scantron Performance Series nationally normed growth targets, a single target score would be expected for 30% of District 39 students. Therefore, a nationally normed approach would fail to capture the actual gains for students in the 90th to 99th national percentile range. This is due to the considerable variance among this group of students. So with the construction of local norms, we can more equitably compare high-achieving students to other students within the same range or higher. A related question was posed by the board: do the demographics of a student population, such as socioeconomic level, matter in comparing scores and student gains? The high scores of students in a community like Wilmette reflects the contributions of well-educated parents, a communal emphasis on academic achievement, a stable learning environment at home, and enriching extracurricular opportunities. Likewise, the low scores of students in different socioeconomic level will reflect some disadvantages of growing up differently. There are always exceptions in both scenarios. However, the broader data source do not allow us to conduct equal comparisons. Growth expectations ranges. Why is the 25th to 75th percentile range defined as meets growth expectation for District 39? And in addition, could the meets range be different? A more common measurement to establish a below and above mean range is a standard deviation, and the standard deviation corresponds closer to 17th and 83rd percentiles. Therefore, quartiles, the 25th and 75th percentiles, are a bit stricter in defining which students fall within the meets category, compared to a range using a standard deviation from the mean. It also aligns to our response to intervention services. However, there is no correct standard for establishing a range, and the meets range can be explored as we investigate what the best model is for District 39. Can the standard error of measure, SEM, be applied in an attempt to explain the uncertainty associated with the student's growth? An SEM measures the reliability of the test measurement for a given student. So in other words, the SEM assists in understanding the repeatability of the measurement by the student. Although SEM is a consideration when explaining the uncertainty associated with students' growth, it is addressed in the scaled score. Therefore, we will use the scale scores with this understanding so that we are not double counting the same consideration. And I learned that, so thank you. What is the proposed student growth model? The proposed student growth model is the use of the established student growth ranges as set by the analysis of 7 years of local performance series data to determine level of growth below meets and above. So after the fall and winter and spring assessments are complete, collaborative conversations and planning will begin, and it will be the Department of Curriculum Instruction who will analyze the performance series data immediately following each fall, winter, and spring assessments. Performance series data will be analyzed using the student gains and growth ranges. With the Department of C&I's assistance, performance series and student gains and growth data will serve as an entry point for discussion and collaborative planning among District 39 educators. Since a single measure does not provide enough information for a complete assessment of student growth, teachers will contribute information, such as curriculum-based assessment performance and any pertinent non-cognitive factors. So as a result of these conversations, teachers will make instructional decisions to differentiate instruction. All students of every level of achievement as defined by the scaled score and the level of growth would be considered in this model. What this data will do is provide an added perspective about students that will influence instructional decisions made by the team. So for example, some of the decisions could be that the teacher addresses the needs of the student group by differentiating instruction in the classroom. Based on collaborative decisions, another member of the teaching team delivers instruction for a designated interval of time. More specifically, a differentiation support teacher may assist in the planning or in the delivering instruction for the students falling below growth target range, but achieving between the 90th to the 99th percentiles nationally. The student may benefit from participation in a response intervention class. The student may also benefit from participation in a class in which a learning behavior specialist assists in delivery of instruction. So during this year, we will continue the investigative and reflective process by piloting the application of the established student growth ranges and reflect on its contribution to identifying ways that District 39 can supplement how we can spark growth for all students. And we'd be happy to answer any questions you have, both of us.
Board members, do we have any questions, comments? Frank.
Yes, first I wanted to thank you for the extra work this summer. It answered a lot of my questions, most of my questions, in fact. I had one or two additional questions. Let's see. One is on the individual level. I think you've articulated that any student that's identified as being in the lower quartile or will be at least considered for additional support of some kind. So that's good. And that was one of the big questions that I had last time, so I appreciate that answer. The second part was from a board standpoint, how, if we can identify if more students are falling in that category in different subgroups. So, for instance, if 30% of the students that that didn't achieve the 25% or were below the 25 percentile were in the top 10%, whatever, then that's a disproportionate number. Will there be some kind of metric that we can get for that? That like, are the top performing students having a harder time reaching that 25 percentile or not?
Right. We would be looking at each group. We've actually have data for every 50 groupings of scores, and we would want to look at every student that way and be able to identify from the pool how many do fall in that upper range, in the mid-range, and also in the lower range. And so we'd be watching out for all of that. We can collect the data and we can break that down definitely in that way.
Okay, I'm not sure I asked.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you definitely answered the question I asked. I'm not sure I asked the question well. For instance, in the analysis that was represented last time, there were 30 students that fell in the proficiency level
Yes.
below, in the 90 and above percentile. What percentage is that 30? How many students fell into that category? Is 30 a big number or a representative number or a small number of?
With because this is the first, I'm sorry, did you want to?
I can help with that. So
Okay,
if we assume that we have 400 students per grade level, okay, and that 1/4 of them will be in the lower quartile, no matter how high their scores are. 'Cause when we talk about the 25th percentile, those kids are in the average range.
Okay.
So when we look at the bottom 25%, then that would be about 100 kids. So then that means that if you have 30 in the top decile, then a third approximately are in that number.
Okay, got it.
So we can actually, yes, the answer is yes to your question. We can calculate that.
Good, all right. Those were my questions. Thank you again for the extra time you spent on this.
Thank you.
Any other board members? Mark? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks again for doing this. You know I'm a huge proponent of doing this, and I want to emphasize for you and for the board what the two things are that I think are incredibly positive steps that we've taken with this. One is that we're using local standards, and the other is that we're looking at growth versus achievement. One of the things I want to emphasize, and that you mentioned in the report, but I want to support you in having said is, it's easiest to do this with performance series because it's really quantitative and it just makes it easy. But we all recognize that performance series is not the only standard. It's not even the gold standard, and so bringing that, both the local standards and the emphasis on growth versus achievement or level to other ways in which we measure students, I think will be a really positive development or continuing development for the school system. So that's just a big kudos because I think this is great. I do have a couple of questions. One is, I'm going to start on, I guess, with the more technical question because I really wouldn't want, I wouldn't want Mr. Ervolino to have come without getting to answer any questions. So I think the model, the way we make it, is a localized spline fitting of the data. Is that correct? Like a LOS or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, really, to be honest with you, I mean, it's crudely splined. I mean, basically, there's not a whole great deal of smoothing at the knots, basically.
Okay.
I'm mostly looking at variance is really kind of my major concern, rather than kind of getting the curve points to fit in, using any number of B-splines, any number of ways of
Okay, so
smoothing.
you're really thinking about it from take my 50-point range, and then I really don't even have to fit any sort of line between those 50
Yeah,
points.
it's mapped, it's regions, there's different domains for the fit, but yeah, I'm not, there's many ways to spline or use local smoothing, there's lots of different ways. And I think for the level of what we have and the number of predictors, which is one, really I look more in terms of trying to capture robustly the variance rather than trying to work out some of those things. Again, there's many ways that could be done if we ever wanted to kind of look down at a greater level, but I think really the idea is to get the variance within the interquartile region, I think.
Okay, and so that's a fair point. And I think that's in the spirit of this developing over time. I think it'll be really interesting for us to think about what the relative achievement between our 50-point ranges are, which is where you get to some sort of, model of connecting the dots, right? But that's a different question. I think where we're starting is great. The other question that I wanted to ask is a more operational question, which is when we talk about looking at the data in the fall, are we looking at growth versus previous fall versus spring? How are we actionizing that information?
Yeah, thank you. Because this is our first year, we would like to consider it our baseline and then see the growth from fall to winter. We could go back to fourth grade, let's say, for example, for a fifth grader who is in the fall, and go to fourth grade spring and look at that information as well. So that is possible. But what we'd like to do is start with the fall as being the particular student's baseline.
I'm not quite, I don't quite understand yet. So when we do the model, when we look at the dispersion in the 50-point ranges,
right.
Historically, are we looking at a fall to spring change? Are we looking at a spring to fall change? What are we looking at
I
there?
misunderstood. I'm very sorry.
No, that's okay. That's good.
Fall to spring.
Okay, so we're looking at fall to spring, and so this fall, when we get scores, we won't have any action we can take because we can't compare it to any model that we have.
Correct.
We won't be able to look at it until spring and actually take action.
Right. We would have a midpoint in winter to be able to say, let's analyze the data, where are the ranges, what are the groupings, let's have these conversations, let's think about all of these different factors, and then kind of do a check-in in the winter, do the same thing, and kind of monitor the progress toward the spring growth.
I want to add to this because if we parallel this to our current RTI model, we will know in the spring the 25% that need attention in the fall.
The subsequent fall.
Subsequent fall. So we would have that data based on the spring information.
Okay.
So we could right now.
Yeah, in theory, we could start
right now
using it now. And
Correct.
In theory, actually, it would be, if we like this model, it would be relatively easy using the historical data we have to do other differences, right? Not just fall to spring, but we could do spring to fall and act on that. We could do winter to winter and act in the winter.
Right.
We could do fall to winter, et cetera.
Right. So what we could do, again, this is still evolving. We take the data that we got in the spring and we say, okay, this is the 25% kids that we need to look at. We'll look at their fall performance series. Oh, look, they grew a lot. So then that was not a pattern. And then we say, okay, there's a smaller group that continued not to grow as much. Then we can take a look at what's happening in the classroom, in the school, the rubrics, and look at all kinds of other data.
Yeah. So I think that'll be a really interesting evolution over time, is to start to ask questions about, which time periods do we use and what is an effective early warning mechanism, what's not. I certainly could imagine things like if we looked at a spring to fall and we found that there was some, backwards steps more than we typically see, that might be an early warning flag for, hey, is there something going on in this kid's life that we should think about, and that getting on that earlier is obviously better. And the very last point I'd make on that is it can go the other way too, which is the multi-year comparison, I think, might be really interesting. But all of those comments are made in the spirit of wow, we've got a great new tool. I hope we'll have a lot of fun, but also get a lot of effectiveness from playing with it and tweaking it some from now on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other board member comments? No? Okay. Thank you all very much. We appreciate your doing the extra work. Our next strategic plan update is our technology infrastructure and one-to-one learning update.
Yes, I am thrilled to say that all of the work for Phase 2 of our network infrastructure project was completed by Heartland this summer, so we are finished there. Also, the grades 5 through 8 one-to-one program is entering its year of full implementation. Tony DeMonte is here to give this report. No? No report? It's just, okay. Would you come up and answer some questions then?
Good evening. So I'm here to entertain any questions you may have. It's purely an update. Both projects are were in progress, and I'm happy to report, as Dr. Luckner said, that we're either closed out of a project or nearing closeout of an implementation. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Board member questions? No, I guess not.
No?
Well, thank you very much.
That could have been an
You're welcome.
That
announcement.
was about the shortest report we've ever had on that. Okay, we're happy, because I think about this time last year, it was not such a short report.
Thank you, Tony. Much
Thank you,
appreciated.
Tony. Okay, and moving on to annual business. The first is our enrollment update. Dr. Luckner.
Yes, this is our August enrollment update that we're giving you this evening. We'll have a full official report at the end of September, October for the fall housing. But we have 3,623 students enrolled, which is stable. Overall, our teacher needs are basically the same. We're down 2 FTE, or full-time equivalent, than we were last year. Basically, Central and Harper only have 3 sections of kindergarten. So while enrollment is robust at the upper grades, we see a little softening at the elementary grades, but we don't know that that's a trend, because usually we have lots of move-ins and those grades fill up. Dr. Glowacki, is there anything to add to this?
Great. Are there any questions from the board? No. Okay. Seeing none, let's move on. Our annual tax compliance notification.
Yes, annually, the business manager reviews our contracts and expenditure records to make sure that we are in compliance with the tax advantage obligations that comply with federal requirements. And this is our annual notice to the public that we are compliant. Is there anything to add?
No, I have nothing to add.
Great. No comments from the board? Okay. Next on the agenda is our annual State of Illinois Treasurer Bond renewal.
Yes, this also is an annual renewal. ISBE requires that 25% of our highest cash balance throughout the fiscal year be part of an insurance bond. Our total is $13 million. Anything to add?
No, I do not.
Okay, great. The next order of business is our fiscal year 16 administrator and teacher salary and benefits report.
This is yet another annual requirement from the state. We have to report teacher administrative salaries from the previous year. We announce them at this meeting, and we post them online.
Okay, great. We're getting rid of a lot of
Yes.
annual business right now. The next one is fiscal year 16 resolution authorizing an interfund loan from the educational fund to the O&M fund.
Yes, as John indicated, we discussed this at the school finance committee. This is a short-term interfund loan from the ed fund to the O&M. This permits us to make our timely payment of construction-related expenses. The short-term loan is necessary to maintain adequate cash flow. And we did this last year. We're likely to do it next year as we're rolling out our construction projects. This is really less a bookkeeping entry than it is a real moving of money. Is that correct?
That is correct, and it will be repaid by the end of the fiscal year.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the finally under annual business, our support staff union letter of agreement.
Yes, and you'll be asked to vote on this in the personnel report this evening. We have a letter of agreement with the support staff union for a sustainability liaison. The position will coordinate food services with curriculum and instruction. Lisa Winter is our food services coordinator, and she will assume these responsibilities, and she'll work with Julie Anderson, who's the C&I coordinator in charge of sustainability.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to our board policy review. We have the first reading of several revised student policies.
Yes, this school year we are looking at student policies, and we'll review and revise all of Section 7. Section 7, as I said, focuses on students. Dr. Glowacki has this report.
I think, as Dr. Lechner mentioned, we're continuing our cycle of review, and Section 7 focuses on policies related to students. Tonight we have the first 8 of these policies, and open for feedback.
Great. Board members, do we have any feedback? I think Cindy does.
Yes, I have a lot, and I already shared it with Dr. Glowacki and Dr. Lechner, but in order to have it, I guess, in the record, I'll share it here as well. So just kind of running through it, on policy 715 about surveys, there's the 2 paragraphs. One just speaks to the first paragraph, the new one about surveys, sounds like it's talking about district, I guess, sponsored surveys, whereas the second section is about third party. And I know there are organizations like the CRC, there may be others, that are kind of district sanctioned, but not really like the administration putting forth surveys. So I thought that category of surveys should perhaps be called out and where it lives, which category it lives in, I guess was that question. Then still on 715, the next page, there's a section on selling or marketing students' personal information being prohibited, and it references social security numbers, but then the next paragraph says the above paragraph does not apply, and it gives a bunch of reasons, or a bunch of scenarios where it doesn't apply, which I interpreted as perhaps meaning that you could share social security information for things, all of those things listed, and it doesn't seem like you should be sharing student social security numbers for any of those things. So if that's not the intent of the statement, that could be clarified. On policy 720, the second paragraph, which talks about the district not tolerating harassing, intimidating conduct, et cetera, and gives a bunch of examples. And I'm suggesting perhaps you include cyberbullying in that category. And then the next page where it talks about sexual harassment, right? And it speaks to the different types, and it references spreading rumors related to a person's activities. And it just struck me that that's a topic that kids sometimes spread rumors about each other, and they post stuff about it. And so my question was whether that is, now those students are accused of sexual harassment, or is it bullying, and does the way that we discipline this or address this align with the bullying policies that we looked at last year? So that's that question. And then around the sections that start with policy, I guess, 730, well, I'll come back to 735 it starts. This one's a simple clarification point. The paragraph that speaks to, that first paragraph, and you talk about clarifying for transferring students, I just thought perhaps you could simplify or clarify that statement that starts, it is within the principal's authority, to simply start with, for transferring students, it's within the principal's authority, just to make it clearer that what that is addressing. The transportation point on policy 740, we talk about non-public school students, part-time attendance, and then you reference transportation is provided on the same basis as the district provides transportation for its full-time students, and it might be helpful to clarify that there is fees associated with that, so that they would have to pay that. Policy 750, and actually this was the one that I thought perhaps should actually precede policy 730, that we should talk about school admissions before we start talking about attendance areas. It just, from a flow standpoint, seemed like it should go first. But the school admissions first point, to be eligible for admission, child must be 5 years old. You probably want to clarify that's to be eligible for admission to kindergarten. Down below, around admission procedure, we talk about the topic around enrollment without a birth certificate, and there's a couple of dates that you reference in terms of compliance, and maybe clarify whether that's school days or calendar days, so people. Let's see, policy 770, the first point around registration, seems that it should actually go in policy 750, either before or after the admission procedure section. Under compulsory school attendance, there's the first two numbered points which reference school year 2014-15, and wasn't sure why it had to do with school year 2014-15. And then there's a set of examples where children are not required to attend public school. And it seems like it's a combination of reasons why children would not be required to attend public school. And then there's some of those that just seem like they're legitimate absences, but the child would still be attending school. So maybe breaking those apart and talking about those separately. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Sorry for.
No, does anybody else, thank you very much. Anybody else have any comments? John?
Questions and comments? Thank you. On the 7:15 students, surveys created by a third party and below survey requesting personal information, there's discussion about the rights of parents and guardians to know about and inspect the surveys. It may be implicit in all of this that there is notification to the parents, but it is not explicit. And I don't think we want to try to set a rule for a period of notification, but some reference that notification is made through customary classroom communications or what have you might be worthwhile. I don't know. It might be a question for lawyers. But I can imagine a family saying, you know, I didn't read the email or what have you. So perhaps belt and suspenders on that, I don't know. Over to 7:20. The second full paragraph down under harassment of students prohibited. And below there are references to behavior that interferes with the student's educational performance or experience. In each case, the word interferes is modified. In the second paragraph, that unreasonably interferes with a student's educational performance. I tripped over the term unreasonably because I don't think there is a reasonable interference in this context. But again, a lawyer might know this is a term of art. We need to have some sort of qualitative standard here that we can argue about. Likewise, below, substantially interfering with the student's educational environment under 2A. You know, subjective term may be necessary, but it stopped me. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, I have one too, which is on this first 7:15, page 2 at the bottom, selling or marketing students' personal information. As I read this is an extension of Cindy's question. The second paragraph says that it does not apply if the personal information collected from the students is for the exclusive purpose of developing, evaluating, or providing educational products or services. So that seems to me quite broad. So as an example, it appears to me that that says that a school official or staff member may sell personal information if it is for the purpose of evaluating educational products. I can think of a lot of situations where I would not want that to happen. As a matter of fact, frankly, the exceptions in 2 apply in my mind mostly to reasons that we might be willing to provide some information, but I'm not sure we would ever want to sell it and gain money from that. And I suspect we have some other policies about providing information under which that falls. So anyway, I think a closer reading of that section is in order.
Are you questioning the whole idea of selling then? So we should circle that up here?
Well,
And in the
this
first
is
paragraph?
about selling, and it
Yeah.
says specifically that you can't sell
Or marketing.
or market the personal information unless, you know, it's for a test or assessment to provide cognitive, evaluative, clinical, blah, blah, blah. Well, does that mean that some doctor could come and say, hey, I've got this great new cognitive test, and, I think, hey, staff member, why don't you provide me, I'll give you some money, and why don't you provide me all the personal information of your students so I can write to them and tell them that they want this cognitive test. I mean, I think that actually would explicitly be allowed here.
Got it.
So we should think about it.
Yep.
Thanks.
I agree. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, then I have a couple comments. Under policy 7:15, under physical exams or screenings, they talk about invasive physical exams, and they say you can't do this unless it is allowed to do an examination for hearing, vision, or scoliosis. Are there concussion-type screenings that we do in school, or do people go to their doctors to have that done and evaluated? Just a question.
There are symptoms that we're trained to watch for, but we wouldn't do an evaluation. But if we saw those symptoms, we would highly encourage and get in touch with the parent right away.
Okay.
So that the parent then would follow up with the medical treatment.
Okay, so it's a different situation than these other three things. Okay, that's kind of what I thought. Under 7:20, middle of the first paragraph, the district, well, actually, it's the second sentence, the district prohibits any conduct that harasses, intimidates, or bullies a student. Then in comma, the part I'm questioning is the part after the comma, whether that conduct is student to student or district employee to student. I'm just wondering, it's any kind of harassment or intimidation. It doesn't matter if it's, student to student or employee to student. You could have volunteer to student. I mean, you could name a whole bunch of other kind of incidences. I'm wondering if we should just strike that part between the parentheses.
I had the same question on that paragraph. I don't know if it's by law or whatever, but can't we just even stop with students are entitled to be educated in an environment that is respectful of their backgrounds, characteristics, and differences? And then that following, why do we have to go into protected classes, et cetera? I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is everyone's treated equally. I mean, all rules apply to everyone.
Yeah, we can check that. I'm pretty sure that's a legal requirement. Yeah.
And I think we restated in that,
You do in the second paragraph, you go
yeah.
back to, but it just, I don't know, it just doesn't make, be kind to everyone.
Right.
When,
play nice in the sandbox.
it just, when you identify certain, it implies that.
Okay, but there is a higher level of standard for protected classes, which is why that needs to be called out.
Okay, thank you. Under 7:35, promotion, retention, and acceleration, just technical, I noticed that you crossed out pupil and put student, but this whole paragraph is pupil and pupils. You might want to be consistent. And I did, in the last sentence of that, the student and other concerned persons may be included in the discussions. We probably said this already. I'm not sure that last sentence is necessary, but concerned persons isn't a phrase that we've used at all in any of these policies. So I'm wondering if we can either define that differently or maybe that whole sentence could just be struck, because I think the sentence before kind of says that. And that's it for me. Okay, anybody else? No. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Heather. Okay, so this is our second opportunity for audience members to address the board. Is there anybody who'd like to address the board at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll continue with our agenda. The next order of business is the consent agenda. Are there any items that the board would like to be pulled from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Steen, will you please proceed with the motion?
I will be happy to.
Thank you.
I move to approve the personnel date, not starting off very well, am I? Okay. I move to approve the personnel report dated August 29th, 2016. I move to adopt the annual budget for Wilmette Public Schools, Cook County District 39, as presented in the report given tonight, reflecting all anticipated revenues and expenditures for a period extending from July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. I move that we adopt the Wilmette Community Special Education Agreement Annual Budget as presented in tonight's report, reflecting all anticipated revenues and expenditures for a period extending from July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. I move that we approve the renewal of the State of Illinois School Treasurer Bond in the amount of $13 million, the annual renewal, excuse me. I move that we approve the attached resolution authorizing an interfund loan from the Educational Fund to the Operations and Maintenance Fund. I move that we approve the attached support staff union letter of agreement modifying Appendix D stipends and extra duties to include a $2,500 stipend for a sustainability liaison. I move that we approve as first read the revised Board of Education policies 7:15, student and family privacy rights, 7:20, harassment of students, 7:30, areas of attendance, 7:35, assignment to teachers and classes, 7:40, promotion, retention, acceleration, 7:50, school admissions, 7:70, registration, and 7:90, attendance excuses. I move that we approve the accounts payable for bills listed between June 28th, 2016 and July 25th, 2016 in the following amounts. Educational Fund, $1,169,528.03. O&M Fund, $56,229.12. Debt Service Fund, $317,490. Transportation Fund, $36,295.11 for a total all funds of $1,579,542.26. I move that we approve the accounts payable for bills listed between July 26, 2016 and August 29, 2016 in the following amounts. Educational Fund, $222,797. O&M Fund, $212,889.43. Transportation Fund, $44,729.37. Capital Projects Fund, $475,830. And Tort Fund, $87,135.50 for a total all funds of $1,043,381.30. I move that we approve the manual checks issued between June 28th, 2016 and July 25th, 2016 in the following amounts. Educational Fund, $492,719.06. O&M Fund, $438,965.55. Transportation Fund, $2,936.96. Tort Fund, $1,337, for a total all funds of $935,958.57. And I move that we approve the manual checks issued between July 26, 2016 and August 29, 2016 in the following amounts. Educational Fund, $418,570.64. O&M Fund, $27,241.20. Transportation Fund, $4,803.52, for a total all funds of $450,615.36.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
John Flanagan?
Yes.
Tracy Kearney?
Yes.
Cindy Levine? Yes. Rick Panzica?
Yes.
Mark Stein?
Yes.
Ellen Sheff?
Yes. The ayes have it. The motion's carried. Moving on to conference items, is there any old business? Any new business? Any good and welfare?
I have good and welfare.
Okay.
I was privileged to be able to attend the district-wide opening day and the in-service day. And I have to say, I thought it was the part that I was able to attend, I thought was terrific. I thought it was great to be able to have not only all the faculty, but all of the staff there. We have an extremely enthusiastic, positive, and bright staff and faculty. And I thought that the speeches I heard were phenomenal. I was really, really impressed. So I left that day and that experience with our district's employees very positively disposed. I thought it was a great experience.
Great, thank you for going. Now may I seek a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss collective bargaining?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion having been made and seconded, will the clerk please call the roll?
John Flanagan.
Yes.
Tracy Kearney.
Yes.
Cindy Green. Yes. Craig Panzico.
Yes.
Mark Stein.
Yes.
Alice Jess.
Yes, motion carried. We are now adjourned to executive session. Thank you for coming to the meeting tonight.